Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Noble and perfectly enlightened one. Namo sadanto suchetoye alahadi samyao samputoshe. Okay, we do the verse for opening the sutra. 无上甚深微妙法，百千万亿难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。The unsurpassed, deep, profound, subtle, wonderful Dharma in 100,000 million eons is difficult to encounter. Now that I've come to receive and hold it within my sight and hearing, I vow to fathom the thus come one's true and actual meaning. Namo 大方广佛华严经华严海会佛菩萨。Namo 大方广佛华严经华严海会佛菩萨。大方广佛华严经华严海会佛菩萨。Homage to the Buddha's Flower Garland Sutra of Great Expanded Teachings and the ocean-wide Flower Garland Assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Venerable Master, Dharma Masters and Dharma friends, Amitofo. Tonight we continue to investigate the sixth ground in the 10 Grounds chapter. We're on page 35, 34, and 35, the last stanza. So we can recite it together. Page 34, the last two lines. Wu Ming. Yeah. 无名与行为过去，是至于受现在转，爱取有生未来苦，观待若断边极尽。Okay, and the English. Ignorance and activities pertain to what is past. Consciousness up to feeling happen in the present. Love, grasping, existence, and birth are suffering in the future. Observing awaited severance of suffering brings their boundaries to an end. Okay, first I'd like to introduce Jingxiang Shi. She came down from City of 10,000 Buddhas and today and is here to share with everyone. And for those of you who don't know her, she is a lecturer of Sanskrit instructor. Okay, I don't know the title. She teaches Sanskrit in Dharamram Buddhist University, and she's also a core teacher for the 10th grade, 10th and 11th grades in the girls' high school, Developing Virtue, secondary school. You forgot to bring your thing. Oh, okay. She brought some artwork down on the 12 links that her students had done, but we left it over there. So maybe later we will get it to show everyone. So, and I'm going to ask her to begin because she can tell a little bit about herself through through the framing of the 12 links.
Okay, so in the sixth ground that we are covering, the main theme is the 12 links of conditioned dependent origination. And so I'd like to share my story of how I became a monastic in terms of travelings in general. I came from Myanmar, or formerly known as Burma, and I was, even though it's a Buddhist country, I was quite ignorant of what is to be a real practicing Buddhist. And even though in Burma I was kind of conditioned to Buddhist practice, I was, I visited pagodas, temples, and I saw Buddhist monks on alms round, and these are all they all serve as mental formations. The second link. So these are all good formations, of course, in terms of becoming a monastic. And the third link, consciousness. So all these patterns stay in my consciousness, and then I immigrated to America and went to school, finished college, and went to Seattle. And after a couple of years into it, I was staying in an apartment, and I was just working and not knowing anything about Buddhism. And one day, a Christian knocked on my door and asked me questions. Of course, his intention was to introduce to Christianity. And he asked me, what religion are you in? So I said I was a Buddhist. And after he left, that question stayed in my mind, and I started questioning, what is it? I called myself a Buddhist, but I didn't know about Buddhism. So that kind of started off, and that's, you can say that's the name of Buddhist, being a Buddhist, came into my mind. And I started to study Buddhism through books, and that's the mental sense. The mind is one of the six sense faculties. And I started to explore, and then one day I saw a tiny advertisement in the newspaper, and that's it's a notice saying that there was a 10,000 Buddhas repentance at Gold Summit Monastery. So I went there, and so I came in contact with Buddhist practice, and I started to read 3 Steps, 1 Bow journals. I was very touched by the practice, and so that's the contact part, which is the 6th link, and the feeling sensation of all the chantings and bowing. All these, came to me, and so from then on, there's craving, you can say, in a good sense, wanting to deepen my practice, but still, in this kind of Mahayana form, I was still seeking to know how to be a Buddhist, because my language, I didn't know about Chinese. I didn't know what was going on, but through the English translation, I was able to know better. But there were translations translators who were doing the translations, but still it was not really enough. I still felt kind of isolated. So I went out to search outside of Go Summit Monastery, and then I met a few people who introduced me to the Theravada Buddhism, and I went on short retreats. And eventually I met Southern tradition monks, particularly Jajang Amaro, and that's where I heard this chanting that we chanted at the beginning here. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. And this is also not really foreign, because in Burma we also had these chantings, but this is again coming into the present. And I went on short retreats and also listened to his lectures. And so this is just to bridge what is to be a Buddhist, and then I was trying to get a sense of what it means to be practicing Buddhist, and also trying to learn meditation. And eventually I felt I need to settle down on one tradition, so I stayed with the Mahayana tradition here, and I eventually decided to become a monastic. So I quit my job. It took me a while to really do it. And so this is, you can say, grasping to become a genuine, truly practicing Buddhist. And then I moved to CTTB in 1998. And before that I was staying at Go Summit Monastery and also at Snow Mountain Monastery. And then I stayed at CTTB for 1 year, so total of 2 years staying at the temples, DRBA temples. So I was qualified to leave home in 1998. 1999, I became a novice. And in 2002, I was ordained. So that's the point. I'm here, existence. I came to exist as a monastic. And so the next two, I'm working on it. Birth, old age. So whether I want to be reborn in the Pure Land or come back as another monastic in next life, I don't know yet.
That's a very imaginative way to interpret the 12 links. I think usually we think of the cycle as leading towards suffering, and perhaps we could say that, I mean, everyone's open to give your opinion too, that before we become, before we leave the conditioned realm of the triple realm, then we're still in this 12 links. So even if we have the good intentions, good, desire for good, spiritual attainment, it's still kind of conditioned. So we are still prone to attachments and afflictions and suffering, even while we're trying to strive towards non-attachment and liberation. There is, I think, maybe you have seen the other cycle that jumps off, starting with faith, and then goes to rapture and equanimity, and then ultimately liberation. that hopefully, we will end up in that cycle rather than this conditioned cycle. But anyways, the 6 grounds is really focusing on the 12 links of existence, how we come into being, and it has 10 different spiritual exercises to help us contemplate this. And the particular one we're on today is talking about past, present, and future, and how they're all related, interrelated. And they're not, they can't actually be isolated out from each other because they're all depending on each other. Everything has its causes and its effects. And so if we can recognize this principle of cause and effect, then we can guard against erroneous views, such as thinking that our present situation it doesn't have its source in the past, it's just arbitrary. And therefore we sometimes feel angry or it's unfair. We want to blame the government or blame our family or blame other people, anyone but ourselves. And we might think that everyone came into this life arbitrarily, so kind of there's nothing to worry about the past. And we might also think that the actions we take right now have no influence on the future, so we can do whatever we want. And that also means that we cannot shape our own future. We are subject to whatever happens to us and whatever impulses we have. So everything is predestined and we should just accept it. There's no reason to try to discipline ourselves or to strive for anything. We can't change the situation, nor can we change ourselves. So that's the normal, that's a typical way that people might think about life. But the Avatamsaka Sutra gives us the opportunity to take a little bit of responsibility and to gain clarity so that we can have some freedom and some control over our present and our future. And we can also take responsibility for our past and what we're doing now, so that we can say that everything that happens to us is no one else to blame but ourselves. And of course this I that's everything's happening to is just a complex bundle of interacting factors, and there's a complex feedback relationship between the different factors, starting with a misunderstanding about who we are, and then based on that misunderstanding we act, and then from those actions there are consequences, and that actually determine our psychophysical being. If, for example, we have emotions, they seem to generally erupt or overtake us without us knowing why, where they came from, but they're actually feedback showing us something about our past. They're hinting very unclearly how we're thrown into this situation. So we may wonder, well, why do we react this way? Is there a hidden reason? We can't really remember the distant past or our past lives generally, but we can learn by inference or by observing how things happen from the recent past until the present, how it impacts us into the future. And if we do sustain practice and discipline ourselves and also associate with good companions and find a good environment, we can change who we are and what our world is like and open up to the great possibilities. And our future will no longer be a dead end. But the point is that actually, although the 12 links can be, we're talking about past, present, and future, and it can map onto past life, present, and future life, it's also in every single moment. Every single moment is our choice will affect what happens in the future, and it's based on all the things we bring from the past. So we're going to go through the 12 links, and probably everyone's very familiar with this because the sutra goes through it 10 times in prose and then 10 times in verse. But it's always, I think it's very important, it's almost the most important thing to understand, and for me, I didn't find the 12 links very appealing or easy to understand for a long time because it seems unintuitive. Because it seems like things happen in there more than once and in different orders. But I think it's because it's trying to show you the cycle from past to present and then present to future. So there's actually two different cycles leading from what we call delusion or affliction to karmic action to the results. And then those results, again, lead to affliction and then action and then more results. So we're just going to start with the first line. Ignorance and activities pertain to what is past. So basically, this is just saying that although past, present, and future is in every single one of the links, but right now we're focusing on what the ignorance that happened and the xing we call karmic formations or that happened in the past that conditions what we are experiencing right now and even our very consciousnesses, what they are like. They're the fruit of our past ignorance and karmic formations. Okay, so the first one is wu ming, ignorance, or avidya, or not seeing. So, but it's not just an absence of knowing, it's a positive misunderstanding. It's a distorted view of things and of ourselves, and it causes us to continue in samsara primarily because we think that we have a substantial self, and everyone else does too. So this ignorance, this wrong view, conditions or nourishes karmic formations.
So the second link is mental formation or samskara. I think it's kind of like subconscious conditioning, like I mentioned about my being in a Buddhist country and just not knowing, not seeing the principles of Buddhism, and but the seeds are there, the seeds from past, and they are waiting to be triggered, to be to ripened, and so we have in the present life and present time, we are also through our actions we are planting these seeds, consciously or unconsciously. And so we have the choice to, if we want to plant good seeds, we want to be surrounded by good environment. And so that's where it is. And one of the writers used this term embodied conditioning. So this second link is made up of the conditioning or being conditioned. So it's still in the subconscious level, and but in the present moment, we have the control. We still can control what is going to be planted in our mind.
So there's an analogy of a river. So a river, how does a river start? First, maybe there's some rain, a big rainfall, and then there's some flowing of water together into gullies, and then it's eroding deeper furrows that, and then the next rainfall comes, and then it gets deeper channels. And finally, there's kind of a continuous river that flows, and it has a certain direction. And then the flow of the water is guided by the river banks. Those river banks were formed by previous water flows. The entire river came into being from nothing but its own interactive feedback processes. So in the same way, our bodies and our cognitive and sensory dispositions are built up over all these different lifetimes, countless lifetimes in samsara. And the paths that we take are conditioned by accumulated results from past actions, which are constantly being reinforced by current afflictive activities, like craving, clinging, desires. And these are deeply informed by the underlying currents of our dispositions. Later we talk about underlying tendencies. So samskara, the karmic formations or mental formations, this is like the riverbed. And then the water is like our stream of consciousness. So this riverbed conditions everything about us, from our physical to our mental activities and the direction that we go. So a river can actually change course, but it's extremely difficult. I mean, normally if you go with the flow, you just go in the same direction. But it doesn't mean it's impossible to change course, because a river is not like a highway that's already, fixed. It's a natural thing, and you can, with certain conditions, for us, it would be discipline and, all the right conditions, it can change its course and even reverse course. There's bows, where rivers kind of turn and go 180 degrees in the opposite direction. So anyways, these first two are from the past, ignorance and karmic formations, and then they condition the next thing, which is consciousness. And we can say consciousness is what brought us into this life. We're come into the mother's womb as an eighth consciousness, alaya consciousness. So, of course, Buddhist conception of life, life begins at conception. So that's why we're against abortion, because life has already begun. And so this consciousness refers to an underlying consciousness called the storehouse or alaya consciousness, or the eighth consciousness, and it's basically subconscious, and it stores all of our karmic seeds that were mentioned. And not only does it store seeds from past actions, and these seeds are like impressions too, but these seeds or predispositions also determine how we perceive the world. So these are the underlying perceptual and conceptual structures that, interestingly enough, are also based on linguistic conventions. So actually our world is kind of, as we accumulate language, it's determined, we perceive in terms of language as well. So this is now, this consciousness is the result of the previous lives or previous ignorance and karmic formations. And what it conditions is something called name and form. Do you want to talk about?
Okay, name and form in Sanskrit is called nama rupa. So name, actually names come from consciousness. We label something. Even Buddhism is a label, and within Buddhism there are all kinds of different traditions, different names, and so in essence these names are empty. But in order to contemplate, we can use the names in order to live in the world, we use these conventional names and form. And so name and form together consist 5 skandhas. They are bunched together, and so this is one of the stages that we see as reality, but it's a false one, because name, we say it's a table, but table with a surface, the top and the 4 legs. Typically we see that as a table, or a chair with something to sit on. But these can be used in different ways. The functions can be different, and so that's when we see something, we see in terms of the name and form. But the functions can be different if we are going to be creative. And so people who are creative can create different forms of chairs and tables. So when I went to visit Google company one time, I see different kinds and shapes and colors of chairs and settings. So these are creative ways to make something. And so with the creative mind, we can, when we practice, we can also see things in a different perspectives. So we don't have to be, caught in a box. If we want to expand our minds, we can use the right brain to be creative. And so these name and form is a condition for the next one, 6 senses, faculties.
I'll just give another example of what Jing Jiangshi said about names being just convenient designations. They're called prajñapti in Sanskrit, and that's part of the name aspect. So, for example, Buddhism analyzes a person as the collection of the 5 skandhas, right? The 5 aggregates. So instead of calling her a collection, or myself a collection of a body and feelings and cognitions and karmic formations and consciousness, I just give myself a name, and other people can call me by that name. It's like a shorthand. So it's something convenient for us to use in the world, because even though we're not substantially any fixed entities, but we do kind of operate kind of as these collections of things that stick together for a period of time. So it's convenient to just have a shorthand to say 镜像式 instead of you collection of 5 different kinds of aggregates, right? Or to always think of that.
Yeah. So the names, we have in this tradition we have Chinese names and romanizations. My name is spelled like Xiang, and then 4th tone, and then another nun has Syang. That's another romanization, and maybe my name is the 2nd tone. Okay, and then another one has the same sound but different spelling. 4th tone. So some people who don't know how to pronounce or spell the names, they get. I get emails from somebody. It's meant for another person, and then another one time I got an envelope that says Dharma Master Xiang, Xieng. Now, it's from financial office. So I don't work in financial office. It's the Dharma Master Hang Xiang from Gold Mountain Monastery. So I returned this to the sender, and she said, "Oh, I said Dharma Master Xiang. So how come you got it?" So, well, you need to specify the Gold Mountain Monastery. So I also got a few other emails regarding financial office, financial things. So these are all conventional names, but we still, in order to stay in the world and function in this world, we still need to use the correct names, and so people don't get afflicted or something don't get wrong, in terms of operations.
Again, they are just useful things, but they're very contingent, not absolute reality. And the form, the rupa part, is also, it's not just inanimate physical matter, but it's a lived body, because it's our senses as well. And this ear, eyes, this is not just a physical object, but the ear has hearing that goes with it, and it's got almost an intention towards hearing. The senses are oriented towards the world. Of course, when we cultivate, we want to turn them inwards, but generally, it's a sensing body. And then the name part of it is the cognitive processing, and then also all of the psycholinguistic process that goes along with what we call a human being is. So, if you want to talk about this in terms of 3 time periods, 3 lifetimes, then you could say this is the development of the fetus inside the womb. It starts from consciousness and then basic form, and then some cognitive ability that later differentiates into the 6 sense spheres, or 6 sense organs along, but that also implies they're objects, and the consciousness is when the objects meet the organ. And then, so that's the next one. And so far, all these, from consciousness, form, name and form, and 6 sense spheres, then that goes to contact, and then feeling. These are all the results from the past ignorance and karmic formations. So we're going to ask later, how can we stop karma from being created? We have to stop it at one of these links, right? But okay, once you have the 6 sense spheres, then there's going to be contact, because the 6 senses just go out and constantly want to pick up data, make contact. And this kind of sense, and then there's sensation or feeling, which is either painful, pleasurable, or neutral. The sensation is not just a passive thing. It's not just purely a physical thing or a neurological thing. It's a whole holistic process when there's a fully functioning sense organ and a sense object, and then there's also presupposed a complex, linguistically aware body. And this contact is basically occurring constantly. Even when we can't hear any sounds, we hear silence. When we don't see when there's no light, we still see darkness. But through cultivation, we can change the nature and the intensity of the sensory contact. So, but how can we stop ourselves from creating future karma? Because once we feel pleasure, it's hard not to crave more, right? When we eat something delicious, we want more of it. When we have some pleasant sensation, we want to have more of it. When we feel pain, it's hard not to want to just get away from it. So that is a key time we have to stop it. But it is also possible to decrease the conditions for getting to here by trying to stop earlier in the process, and also trying to infuse our eighth consciousness with pure seeds that also change the balance of the seeds in the karmic seeds. For example, all the Buddhist practices that we do, whether we're reciting Buddha's name, mantras, sutras, bowing, or meditating, all of this can help stop this conceptual proliferation, which is a fancy term for what we call false thinking. But it's our non-stop mind, our non-stop chatter, that keeps this process of the 12 links going. So finding a good environment to really practice and to calm this mind and the senses and gather in the senses and lower the intensity of sensory contact is helpful. So we can also practice, when we're chanting, we listen to our own chanting and turn our hearing inwards. Or we can practice eyes, typically we say eyes contemplate the nose contemplates the mouth inquires into the heart. So it's kind of like drawing in your senses down to your center. And we can also practice Chan, which is focusing on who is mindful of the Buddha's name. So by holding the mind in the who, if we can really focus, or by chanting the Buddha's name also, we're stopping that chatter and we're drawing in our senses, then we won't have so many opportunities to be feeling pain and pleasure, and then which tends to lead on to the next stage of craving or desire or aversion. And at that point it's hard, although it's still a weak link that you can try to stop it, but it's harder because the momentum is already developing, because especially if it's something pleasurable and you want it once and you get it and then you keep wanting it, and then it gets stronger as a habit almost, until possibly you get jaded and you get satiated finally, or you wake up. But otherwise, it just develops into a stronger and stronger thing. So then you have to look really far down the chain of cause and effect and see where it leads, and then use your contemplation and imagination to stop yourself. And it's hard because emotions, generally like even anger or revenge or desire, sometimes even sadness, it feels good to go into that state because of certain things happening. But when you indulge in that, it actually drains our vital energy, and it also blinds our clarity. It doesn't mean that we should repress emotions. If they're already there, then you have to gently deal with them and allow them to take their course, but just don't attach to them and hang on to them or reinforce them. But if we can recognize that our perception of the world is based on a lot of linguistic conventions and cultural perspectives, then it's not absolute. Then maybe we don't have to be so attached, and we can counteract anger and other emotions with contemplation. Take some other perspectives. I think I've said this before, but the Venerable Master not always, just said, if somebody hits you, just pretend you bumped into the wall. And then you're not going to go punch the wall, or you might, but you'll first think that's kind of foolish because you'll just get a bloody fist and you might have to go to emergency room. If someone insults you, then just pretend they're singing a song to you in some other language you don't understand. The Zhuangzi also has some similar analogies. It says, well, suppose you're on the river on a boat and another boat rams into your boat. If you look over there and see that the boat is empty, then you're not going to feel anything. Even if you're a hot-tempered person, you're not going to get mad. But if you either see somebody or you think someone's in the boat, then you're going to think they're purposely ramming into you. And then you're going to yell at them to, go that way, leave some space, or get out of my way, or whatever. And if that boat doesn't, make any motion, doesn't change its direction, then you yell again. And if the person still doesn't respond or the boat doesn't change direction, then you keep yelling until you work yourself into a fury and you think that they are being very hostile. But then the Zhuangzi text says, well, what's the difference? The first time you were empty, and so you didn't get mad. And also the boat was empty. And the second time, it was full, and you were full, meaning your mind was not empty. You had this idea, and you had all these ideas, presumptions for the most part about that person is trying to, attack me or be rude or be disrespectful. And so you get yourself all worked up and probably get into a real conflict if there really is a person on the boat. But if we can just reflect, and also if we know that getting into a emotional tantrum or fit actually is very damaging to our own vitality, then we can say, okay, we don't want to hurt ourselves in that way. So I'm just going to contemplate as if it's an empty boat, regardless of whether I know if there's somebody on there or not. So
yeah, I want to comment on the six senses. So we have the sense or consciousness of hearing, making contact with the hearing faculty, and even though we're talking about in a non-positive way, but there are certain things that can be beneficial. So one of the examples is what's going on at the City of 10,000 Buddhas. We have the bowing session, and we have tunes to follow, and this is, I think, is helpful for a lot of people, and the tune kind of unite all participants to follow, and in the bowing session. And I think music or chanting used in this sense can be very beneficial. Now I look at all the different people coming together for this session, and it's amazing that the people come, different people, personalities, they all come to unite at one place, because partly because you can say good tunes, even the students like to join because of the chanting, and this is one of the attracting forces that bring all the people together. And of course, ideally, we want we want to go beyond this attachment to the chanting, to the when we concentrate and we can get to the slowly approach to that stage where we are not attached to the tune. Yeah. And so also in the children, young people, at the young age, they are still attached to all the sights and sounds. So we are at the developing virtue school. We try to limit certain things. So not limited access to internet, and so on. But on the other hand, we have the common core, where we want to get some visible outcomes, like visual outcomes. So that's why we have the students. Now I have students do this graphic on travelings. So yeah. So can I show you?
Oh, okay, sure. So this is from the Buddha Studies class.
So I asked them to, I explained the 12 things, and then they were supposed to choose something that they can apply to, or some issues, global issues, or something that they can relate to. So this one student did on racism, using the 12 links, and then another student, did trip to the Mars. So even though it may not be accurate, but it's an attempt to do something that they can work on, and while doing it, it's really, they can at least get some idea. Yes. Okay, I'll read the note here. This ignorance. There's a flask here with a chemical, tube, and ignorance is due to mankind's ignorance of Mars. They decided to explore it. Okay, they decided to explore Mars. Ignorance, not knowing about Mars. Due to mankind's ignorance of Mars. Okay, and activity. Ignorance led to activity. So mankind sent a spacecraft to Mars. And then here's consciousness. Mankind started to imagine life on Mars and began to further study of Mars. And fourth, name and form. News of mankind's future on Mars started to spread out. And fifth, sixth sense organs. Mankind started packing in to leave for Mars. And seventh, feeling. Mankind arrived at Mars and started to feel the living environment of Mars. Sixth, contact. Mankind officially departed for a new life on Mars. And the seventh. Oh, seventh, we already, yeah. Seventh is feeling, we already.
Yeah, I guess
started, yeah. Eighth is craving. Mankind started to live on Mars and wanted to gain more land on Mars.
Sounds like Earth.
Yeah. And ninth, grasping. Mankind began to expand the territory on Mars. And 10th, becoming. Mankind successfully established a new colony on Mars. 11th, birth. The cities on Mars started to get more prosperous, and human population on Mars increased tremendously. We have buildings here, and old age. Environment on Mars started to change, and mankind could not adapt to it. So the 12 links on racism. Ignorance, the lack of true understanding, not understanding the notion of the absence of self. Karmic formation. Ignorance results in karmic formations, which are impulses that come before actions. Since we don't understand and we are ignorant, the thought of racism arises. Third is consciousness. Consciousness arises from karmic formations. It is when the 6 faculties, eye, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, become aware of the 6 external phenomena, we start to perceive, comprehend, and understand. People start to distinguish one race from another, and this marks the start of discrimination. Name and form. Name and form arises from consciousness. They are a combination of mind and body, which join the 5 skandhas into an individual existence. So gradually, 2 different groups are formed. The ones who respect equality mark themselves as anti-racism, and the ones who discriminate other races are marked as pro-racism. And 6 senses. The 6 senses arise from name and form. They are eye, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. These senses correspond with the external phenomena. People become more aware of the differences between different races due to the presence of 6 senses, eyes, nose, ears, tongue, body, and mind. They then start to judge and discriminate others by what they see, hear, touch, and smell. Contact. Contact arises from the 6 senses. It is the experience created by the 6 senses, sense of objects and consciousness, which leads to feeling. After noticing the distinctions between different races, aiding by the 6 senses, people start to interact with each other, which kindles the spark of affection or hatred. The fight over the issue of racism will become... Oh, this is another one. Okay, next is feeling. Feeling arises from contact. The 3 kinds of feelings are pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. People have different feelings regarding the issue of racism. Some dislike racism, others want to promote racism. Craving. It is desire, pursuit of pleasure, and identifications with attachment. Driven by desires, some people urge to end racism, while others still continue to discriminate and oppress people from other races. Grasping. Grasping arises from craving. Due to desire and ignorance, we try to hold on to things that are impermanent. People become attached to the issue of racism. Becoming. Becoming arises from craving and grasping. It means to give birth, create, and exist. People start to think of plans and form organizations either to end or promote racism. Birth. Birth arises from becoming. Birth refers to either physical birth or the moment-to-moment arising of renewed consciousness. Individuals start to lead movements on ending racism. Organizations are established either to protect or evacuate people from different races. Aging and death. Aging and death arise out of birth. Death is the cause of aging and is the condition for ignorance. The fight over the issue of racism will come to an end one day. This is somebody saying that. Okay.
So that's like a collective 12 links, communal 12 links. So I think they may or may not understand the deep meaning of the 12 links, but at least they're getting some exposure to what the 12 links are. That's always the case. I mean, I remember a few years ago we had a rap song about the Eightfold Path and the Four Noble Truths. but I'm not sure how deeply they understood, because being 15, 16-year-olds, their minds are in a different place. They don't really think of it as too much suffering, except when they get a bad grade, and but they had a fun time making the rap song, and it probably stuck in their minds. So it's a conditioning. It's like a planting a seed and forming a formation. So in the future, if they come back to it, then they have some momentum going already. So are there any questions or comments? We haven't finished, but maybe it's a little bit tedious. Are there any questions or comments till this point? Yes. I just had a question because some of them seemed like it was a positive thing to go through the 12 links and go establish a colony on Mars. But of course, it ended up being a bad one in the end. And so I think that actually they do get the sense of it, because thinking that you want to go outwards with technology to conquer new territories and so forth is really a part of the conceptual proliferation. I don't know, what does everyone else think?
There's another one that uses the story of a movie that they are familiar with. It's called Edge of Tomorrow. I don't know the story, but I think it's a story for young people. It's a big poster. They have kind of characters. Maybe it can be passed around. Yeah, two student team. Yeah.
Two teams. Oh, okay.
So the last part says, live, die, and repeat.
There's a lot of killing in this one. Right. It's a guy who's on some place and he's trying to escape, and then
there's a character called Major William Cage. No, I think he's fighting. He's in the military. He's fighting for something. Anyway, so this is something. I mean, they saw this is a movie. Something. I don't know.
yeah, they like science and science fiction. Maybe Jing Xiang's having been an engineer in the past influenced them. Aerospace.
The summary of the story is here. It says, an alien race has hit the Earth with an unrelenting assault, unbeatable by any military unit in the world. Major William Cage is an officer who has never seen a day of combat when he is unceremoniously dropped into what amount to a suicide mission, killed within minutes. Cage now finds himself inexplicably thrown into a time loop, forcing him to live out the same brutal combat over and over, fighting and dying again and again. But with each battle, Cage becomes able to engage the adversaries with increasing skill, alongside special forces warrior Rita Radusky. And as Cage and Radusky take the fight to the aliens, each repeated encounter gets them one step closer to defeating the enemy.
And the enemy is greed, anger, and delusion. And he's repeating over and over this struggle against greed, anger, and delusion, and getting closer and closer to defeating it. So, okay. So, for completion's sake, maybe we'll continue on this and finish. We stopped with. Where did we stop? Okay. So we have. We've stopped with sensation or feeling, which is painful, pleasant, or neutral, and then the next one is, it leads into, that's the present result from the past, but that now the next step takes you into creating creating seeds for future suffering, basically taking some karmic action, which is craving. So craving or love and clinging, grasping, or appropriation, these are different names for qu. Existence and birth are suffering in the future. So, so in the seed analogy, we had past karmic action had planted seeds in the field of our alaya consciousness, but the seeds are latent until they are nourished or watered by affliction. And the affliction here is the craving and the grasping. So craving is trishna, which is also like thirst. It's more than just lust, wanting, or desire. It's actually a coalescing and actualizing of previous sensation, feelings into an intention, and it's like a focusing on a goal because you want what you've been feeling that's good. It's a fixation on an object, and we orient ourselves by that fixation. So we kind of orient our values and our priorities according to what we fixate on. Kind of like a thirsty person in the desert, who doesn't really care about anything else. Other kinds of, pleasurable things are offered to him, but he just wants to get water. So he will forget everything else. And here the thirst is not so much for material things, or at least that's not so much the problem as something more fundamental, which is the thirst for ideas and theories that actually are mistaken, but they define who we are. So for example, we have some idea about status symbols. I mean, this is worldly. We have a status symbol that we think certain kinds of clothing, certain kinds of brands, certain cars are the status that we want. So we will be willing to pay a lot for those things and give up a lot of other things in order to do that. Maybe especially teenage girls. I was one of them. My mother reminds me that I would be willing to spend the entire season's clothing budget on one pair of shoes. Or I would refuse to, buy certain brands of things, and this is normal, I guess. But it was probably very, very foolish and very painful for my parents. But they did allow me the freedom to choose for myself and take the consequences. So, okay, and then the question is why? Okay, no. So, so I have a question. Why does pleasant feelings lead to craving necessarily? Does it have to? Do all pleasant feelings lead to craving? Or some kind of like wanting this? What do you think? What do people think? Interested.
No, I don't think you have to go with the craving. You can go from pleasant to, if you, for instance, change your object of attention, then you might not crave it.
So it's kind of like a fleeting, pleasant thing, you mean? You're trying to counter the...
Yeah, so for instance, if you have an object that you like, but you don't actually, you actually have to be fairly aware of what your mind is doing, have a certain amount of stillness. And so you have the contact, and then you don't actually just pursue it. You actually, ideally, actually have your meditation topic going already. So you don't actually follow whatever things arise in the mind. I think you can see it a little bit in Chan. If you're sitting for quite a few hours in the day, then as objects hit your mind, you have this kind of space that it doesn't quite stick. You don't kind of follow it. You're just kind of still, so you don't move after it. But it takes a certain amount of stillness to, I think, not go from pleasant sensation to craving after it.
Good. Yeah, thank you. And then, in addition to that kind of thing where we can use cultivation to counter the transition from pleasant feeling to craving, there's also in the Yogacara and maybe earlier Buddhism talking about the underlying tendencies. So it's not just that one feeling that leads by itself to craving, but because that feeling is already triggering or built on underlying tendencies that we've had from past experiences, they're kind of latent dispositions, and when they arise, when they, become active, then there's that force that leads from just the responses of pain or pleasure all the way to the afflicting craving and grasping. So just want to quote something from the middle-length discourses, Majjhima Nikaya. When one is touched by a pleasant feeling, if one delights in it, welcomes it, and remains holding to it, then the underlying tendency to desire lies within one. When one is touched by a painful feeling, if one sorrows, grieves, laments, weeps, becomes distraught, then the underlying tendency to aversion lies within one. So I think what it's saying is that if you're touched by a pleasant feeling, if you're perhaps, cultivating, or because this pleasant feeling is it doesn't trigger something, then you will not necessarily always delight in it, welcome it, and remain holding to it. But if you do, then it means that you already have this underlying tendency that's causing you to do that. So that's why people, everyone may have enjoy some kind of pleasant food or movie, music, anything, but then some people tend to get more strongly attached to it, and other people it's just like, oh, it's just a one-time thing, and I'm done with it. It's off of my mind. And same for painful feelings. Although it's hard to say two people might have the exact same experience. Well, I guess you could say it like a physical thing, like a shot or something. People will still have maybe somebody had a very bad childhood experience of going to the doctor. So all that fear causes them to tense up and to fear getting even a shot. And then they have, since that childhood fear had already built up this like aversion to going to the doctor. So then one will have a much greater reaction than a normal person who can take the pain of, the fleeting pain of a shot. Okay. So that's why there's, in the alaya consciousness, there are these underlying tendencies that perpetuate our suffering and our samsara. And then there's also the difference between a cultivated person and an average person. So the average person has a painful feeling, and then he starts to worry and grieve and get distressed. And so it's like getting hit by the dart of the physical pain, and then getting hit by another dart of the mental pain. And then he resisting and resenting it. And then so he has the underlying tendency of aversion that's forming. And then because he's so strongly resisting it, he seeks to escape it. And because he doesn't know how to cultivate, he thinks that he'll just go the opposite extreme and find some sensual pleasure to indulge in. And then that leads to desire for more. And then that continues the cycle of suffering. And he also forms the tendency to desire. And so in any case, no matter what the feeling is, whether it's painful or pleasurable or even neutral, because he doesn't know how to escape those feelings or just not remain detached to them, so he's caught, he's fettered. But a cultivated person, he could experience a painful sensation, but he does not worry about it. He has no grief about it. So he's only hit by the first dart, and he can take it. He doesn't resist or resent the pain even, because he understands, first of all, that his self is just this bundle of stuff, and he doesn't identify strongly with it. And the pain is also ephemeral. Everything will pass. So he has no underlying tendency to aversion that gets reinforced. And also he knows how to escape that other than by enjoying pleasure. So he doesn't go into trying to distract himself with something pleasant. And so he doesn't have the underlying tendency for desire. He knows that all these feelings are ephemeral, and he knows how to escape them. And so he has no underlying tendency to ignorance either. He's not fettered by any of these feelings. So that's the difference. But
yeah, I think to get to that stage of not being controlled by these pleasures and unpleasurable experiences is really hard. So that's why we have group practices, and if we get conditioned, if we allow ourselves to be conditioned through the group practices, then we can slowly overcome the influences, these forces.
Now we're on link 9, and we only have 4 minutes left. Upadana, it's appropriation or clinging, grasping. And so it's both it's basically something that we desire, and we keep desiring it, we keep reaching out and grasping for it, for what gives us pleasure, or seeking ways to get away from what gives us pain. We're appropriating it for ourselves, and this is to perpetuate actually this identity of self, and expand it and strengthen it, or to reject certain things. And so it's kind of setting the boundary of self. And it's building up an identity. So that's why, well, in the English, appropriate is ad proprius, meaning to take it as your own, make it as your own. So the desire sets the goals, and the craving sets the goals or the intent to do something, and the appropriation is actively actualizing it and grasping it, enacting it. And so it's said to be a very important link in Yogacara, because it's instead of talking about subject and object, it talks about that which grasps and that which is grasped. And both of those are emergent, actively constructed processes. But if it keeps going, then eventually it becomes self-perpetuating, and it's called bhava, the 10th link, which is becoming, which is basically a force, an impetus that keeps on going, an inertia that's active. So like breathing, we have to take the next breath. Our heart has to keep beating, and every thought and sensation just kind of automatically gives rise to the next one. And by this time it's already kind of late, because everything's already been constructed, our karmic construction, driving us into the next moment. And so for liberation, it means ceasing this bhava. Bhava is also an outflow. It's a craving for life, and we have to overcome this. It doesn't mean to be suicidal. It just means not craving the conditioned life. But if the bhava, these impulses, they coalesce into birth or coming into being, arising due to conditions, and then death, and also sickness, old age, lamentation, and so forth. It's this arising and ceasing not only of the individual, but of all conditioned things, objects, thoughts, persons, moments. This is the 12 links describes it. And then if you can connect the cycle back, so because at death or at the ceasing, the you forgets everything about this life in your next life. So then you're all confused again, and you have these patterns, and you repeat the same thing, and you don't recognize it. So it's a kind of a forgetfulness or a lack of mindfulness. But again, we just want to stress that these 12 links are just labels. They're conventional shorthand for this process that's very complex feedback and interrelated. And it's actually none of these, desire doesn't ever exist by itself. Sensation doesn't exist by itself. They kind of all are defined in terms of each other and blend into each other. So, and then also on another point of view, they're all simultaneously happening. In every moment, you can pick, we might be focusing on the sensation we're feeling, but we don't remember that the reason we feel this sensation is because we're karmically formed in this way, and we have this kind of embodied conditioning and this consciousness. And when we are desiring, we forgot that it's because of all these previous pleasurable experiences that are caused to have this desire. But if we look deeply, then we can see how one links to the other. And then the last line says, observe, I'm going to retranslate this in the way I think it makes sense. 观待若断, 边际静. From what Venerable Master's very short commentary said, and Master Qingliang also, it says, basically you're contemplating this whole thing and awaiting for this chain of suffering or this links of processes to be severed. And then the boundaries come to an end. The boundaries actually mean the past, present, and future, what supposedly divides them, which they actually aren't divided, they're all connected. And then it's this cessation cycle. So when ignorance ceases, then karmic formation ceases, and when that ceases, then consciousness ceases, and so on, all the way. So then there's no birth, and then no death at the end. So, however, although these things cease, one's true nature doesn't cease, but it's just waiting for this process to be severed so that one is liberated from conditioned existence and has true liberated existence. Can we go over a little bit? I just wanted to say my favorite topic is on animals, so I wanted to say something about how animals also, the 12 links shows that we're not different from animals. Animals also go through the 12 links, and also we could, the 12 links could show how we might ourselves enter the animal realm very easily just by certain combinations of factors. Maybe it would be less linguistic and intellectual, but more strong in certain desires or something. But it's just streams of consciousness flowing into a non-human state very easily. So hopefully this could also generate an understanding that leads to compassion, that we are not categorically different from animals. Animals are former and future humans and future Buddhas. So 3 weeks ago, I attended a conscious eating conference, and it was very, very shocking. There was a animal rights activist who loves animals, but for the sake of documenting the abuses that go on in factory farms and slaughterhouses, he hired himself out to work in there for a few weeks at a time to, take some undercover footage. And of course, it was very painful for him because he loves animals and he's having to kill them or to, treat them very badly. And he said that he worked in the slaughterhouse for chickens in the Midwest, and they have the assembly line where these hooks are going by really fast, and there's 10 workers on each side, and they have to grab chickens that are on the assembly line and hook them up by their feet, just like really fast. All the 10 workers are coming one after another to hook up. And so he calculated the amount of chickens being killed. And I forgot the numbers that he said, but nationwide, we're killing 23 million chickens per day, or 16,000 per minute. And their lives are really hell. Even the cage-free ones, they're basically living in, I think you all know this. But it was just touching to see that, there's quite a few people that care and trying to get the news out to ordinary people who are not aware of what goes on. So this particular person, he also worked with cows in a dairy farm, and he showed us this footage of the cows. They're walking in knee-deep manure because I guess it's just they find it's no need to clean it out, or there's no place to put all that sewage. So they walk in knee-deep manure, and then they get milked. And of course, sanitary conditions are questionable, but also just, he was saying, next time you enjoy a dairy product, think about that it's really not the happy cow of California producing the milk for you, but it's these basically hellish operations that are kind of, for humans we would call it a holocaust, but for animals we just don't think it's anything. It's just the way to be. And he said, when he worked for the slaughterhouse, the cows know they are going to die. They stare at you, they talk to you, they're crying, they're begging speechlessly for mercy. And the chickens, he said, hanging them upside down, they're looking at you with their eyes. They know what's going on. And he said that the egg industry and the dairy industry are actually worse than the meat industries for both chickens and cows, because at least for the meat industry, you have to fatten them up. And so you kind of treat them nicely, and they have short lives, but the dairy industry, cows don't have long lives either. After 5 years or 5 or 6 years of, continuous milking, continuous impregnating, they basically dry out. So they're killed, but they're not in good shape at all. But for the eggs, it's a slow death by torture, because they're in these tiny cooped up battery cages, and because I think for egg laying you can't be free range. It's just too messy to be having, eggs would get broken. So and then he documented how even the chickens who die, they just leave them in the cages, and only when the whole batch is finished, then they take them out, and they're like caked and dried up, and it's really a hell. And then there was another speaker who opened an animal sanctuary, who was just saying how they go on rescue missions and they take volunteers, and she says, people are all very enthusiastic and they go on these rescue missions, and when they get to peek inside one of these abandoned factory farms, and they're just like they're just speechless. They can't believe that we do these things, because you open the door and there's like tens of thousands of animals in there, but it's all in the dark and they're all silent, but they're alive, and they're just staring out at you. So I just think that I don't know why, I know, okay, he said the slaughterhouse workers, because our normal human compassion, they'd have to numb it so that they can do their job. Because, everyone can see and feel the animals begging them. But they have to make a living, so they do this. But generally, sooner or later, they get a little bit mentally unstable. But ordinary people, that's why they have to hide this from ordinary people. Otherwise, probably people wouldn't even, And then fish. There was some fish activists, and this is very interesting because fish have always been off the radar, right? Because fish, people think, it's hard to relate to fish. But actually, you can go to fishfeel.org. Basically, fish do feel, and they are sensitive to pain just as any vertebrates are. They're very intelligent. Some of them are very long-lived. And the main thing is that people eat many, many, I forgot how many times, like 10 times, 13 times more fish than all the other animals combined, land animals. So, and we basically have fished clear-cutted the ocean, you could say. These trawlers from Thailand are out on the sea for years at a time, and they have these nets that basically sweep down to the ocean floor. And then not to mention this kind of slave labor, child labor that goes on the ships, where people actually sometimes are caged. But anyways, okay, back to there's fish feel as much pain as birds and mammals. And they have reported fish that live up to over 200 years, a koi carp named Hanako, and a sturgeon lived to be over 100 years, plus there's other kinds of fish that live to be over 100 years, and the oldest goldfish, 45 years. They communicate using sound, signals, changing colors, their emotions. They can change the color of their skin. There's a California singing fish that hums to communicate. And some of them, they can scare away skin divers with booming sounds. They're called, and then there's these elephant fish that have the fastest known form of communication with a response time of 12 milliseconds. And they have a proportionately larger brain than humans. And of course, we all know about fish traveling in schools. They're socially cooperative. They also use body gestures and work in team with different species to hunt. And they also use tools to break open shells. So Dr. Cullen Brown is a fish expert. He says, each fish is an individual, just like people. You have aggressive ones, shy, retiring ones. You have bold ones. Some of them even have complex social relationships and gather information by eavesdropping on others. They build homes and nests, and some even keep gardens, algae gardens. So it's really amazing. We should learn more about fish, and so they're arguing, we have to be more humane if we're actually going to kill and eat them. We have to not just let them suffocate to death after fishing them. And then last Guanyin session, we released a piglet. Some of you may have seen her. She was discovered on the streets of Ukiah, a 1 week old. And so DRBA basically sponsored her care in a sanctuary in Santa Rosa. And the girls' school also helped to sponsor her. Anyways, we thought it would be nice to sponsor a farm animal for once, since 10 billion. Yeah, 10 billion per year are killed in the U.S. farm animals, land animals. Okay, I think we better stop. Are there any announcements?
I don't think there's not too many people who haven't heard, but we're having Buddha Root Farm from June 7th to June 13th. So if people would like to sign up, please go to berkeleymonastery.org. I hear the deadline is May 15th. Oh yeah, Oregon, sorry. Oregon.berkeleymonastery.org. So please go there to sign up if you're interested. Okay, anything else? Okay, we have Buddhism for the Modern Mind on Monday. So if you're interested, please come. We do, yeah. We have the Intro to Buddhism class on Thursday. This will be the last this week, and every other week we do it. So we'll have an intro class on Samadhi, on concentration. And what else? We have the 10,000 Buddhas Repentance happening at 10,000 Buddhas. The first full day is today, so we'll be going for a little bit more than 3 weeks. So people are welcome to go up and participate. The last day?
The last day, May 17th.
May 17th?
Bathing the Buddha ceremony. Oh, and May 22nd is the DRBU graduation ceremony. Friday, 2 p.m. at CTTB. So we have a lot of, graduates from the new program and also the legacy program.
May every living beings, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace, with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may their minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light break the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise.